So listen, we're going to start off with what I like to call rapid fire. So you have to pick one of them. And if they don't apply, you can call wash. But I think I already know the first one. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Rolling Stones or Beatles?
So tough. I can't pick both.
Can't pick both. Gotta pick one.
Beatles.
Beatles. All right. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Beach or mountains?
I like to go from one directly to the other, ideally. I guess I'll go. It's so hard. Let's go beach.
All right. This will be interesting for you as a writer. PC or Mac?
Mac.
Kramer or Costanza?
Kramer. Why is that interesting for me as a writer? I love writing on a Mac.
Well, it's like that's your toolbox, and like I haven't used a PC in probably 15 years, and my wife uses one of those I don't even know what they're called, Surfaces, and the kids have like the Chromebooks. I don't know what I'm doing on these things, but it's preference.
Yeah, it is. I always feel like any sort of PC-based program I describe it as jittery. Like it just feels like it's not natively programmed and it's trying to look like a Mac, and I feel like there's it's just not working. It doesn't feel organic.
I call it janky.
Exactly. Janky. It's like the alignment's off. There's a wheel somewhere.
All right, two more. Superman or Batman?
Ooh, Batman.
Kardashians or Osbournes? What's your favorite reality family?
Osbournes.
All right, cool. All right, so I want to go back to the beginning. To kind of start all this, what do you like to be called? Author, writer, journalist? Like, what's your go-to? What do you like to? What's your preference?
I think it's easiest to see. I'm not. I left Rolling Stone in 2002, and I rarely do journalism anymore because I'm usually booked up with book projects or other things. Like I've worked on a documentary, and that was really cool. But I guess I just say writer. I usually say author. I kind of just throw them all in there. Like if it's my bio on anything, I just say author, writer, journalist. Because even when I was at Rolling Stone, I was, I did news stories for sure and loved doing that. But the things I liked the most were profiling people and sort of the psychology of getting into their head and analyzing them and stuff like that. So that to me is more what like an author does. Okay. Just with characters they make up usually. What you call
it with New York Times bestselling author.
What's that? Yeah, it does kind of roll off the tongue in an impressive way. I would say that. So, what do you call a nonfiction writer? You call them a writer, right? Yeah. Nonfiction author. So a little of all of those things.
All right. All right. So you started, like, when was the first time you knew what you wanted to do?
Oh, gosh. Well, I had an internship at Rolling Stone. Yeah. And I was like working in a bar in the Village and a couple bars. And I think, I liked the internship. I was like, this is cool. I was getting to do research. I got snagged by the books department. They used to have a books division, and they were redoing the Rock and Roll Encyclopedia for the first time. So that involved very quickly, there were a bunch of entries that they couldn't track people down, and they sort of threw them on me with a list of contact numbers at record labels to try to find, like Giorgio Moroder. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. And I got to talk to him. So that's when I was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. And then to be quite honest, I was, reading the magazine when we'd get it, obviously. So I was reading Rolling Stone because Winter Media also has Us Magazine and Men's Journal. I'm a music guy, so when I was reading, there was a cover story on the Smashing Pumpkins by Chris Mundy, who's gone on to a great career in TV writing. But the Smashing Pumpkins were kind of my college band because I went to school in Chicago in the early 90s when they were just coming together. So I knew everything about the Smashing Pumpkins, and I loved them tremendously. And I remember bringing the cover story, so excited to read it, and I completely fell asleep because it was the most boring thing I've ever read. And nobody really opened up to him, it seemed like. And it was just like, it wasn't just because I knew everything about it. I was just kind of gobsmacked that he wasn't asking, to me, interesting questions, and he didn't get anything out of it. And that's when I was like, I want to do this. Like, I can do that better. Very cocky thing for an intern to think, but I did it. I stuck it out. So I would say that was when it was. It was like indignance, anger over the pumpkins article, and a bunch of pride. That's sort of like.
But even signing up to applying for that internship, what was the trigger to do that? Was there some underlying, or you just wanted to get, like, what was the motivation to even sign up?
I studied history all through college, and I really wanted to stay in this sort of ivory tower environment. I like being around people learning things, and love sort of college, just like the essence of, I think from my friends that are professors, student body attitude has changed a bit over the years from back then. But I really loved that environment, and that was my plan. Some family drama happens. I basically like moved to Colorado and was just gonna like needed to chill for a little bit. And some family drama brought me back to the East Coast sooner than expected. So I just started applying for internships, and I got an internship at Paper Magazine, which is super hipster before there was hipster, just a cool downtown magazine. And I got one for Rolling Stone the next day. And I thought Paper was really cool. And the person who was sort of overseeing me was like, took me aside and said, "Look at all these people. Not all these people are freelance. They can get let go at any second, and they don't have any benefits. Do yourself a favor and call Rolling Stone and go there." She's like, "I know you like this downtown scene and stuff, but do yourself a favor." So forever thanks for that.
It was really gracious, A lot of people wouldn't take the time to even throw you this phone.
Yeah, it was super nice. And also combined with the fact that I think my first day at the internship, I was working for Mickey Boardman, who's a classic New York character. And my first day, I think I got his dry cleaning and did some errands. And I believe he's sober now, but then he's been public about having like a drug issue. And he was really on drugs. So I was like, put two and two together, and I was like, she's doing me a favor. This will just be like, I'm going to probably just be fetching things all summer. And instead, soon enough, once I sort of proved myself a good researcher, which is where being a history major and writing papers for 4 years came in, I was the one tracking down, the really tough to find people in the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia. And then, Kurt Cobain died, and I was assigned to help get all the articles and every mention ever for this tribute book that we put out. So I sort of was jumped right into pretty serious projects, and that kind of like fired me up.
When did the music bug hit you? Because it's like the best of both worlds. You have an interest in music and an interest in history, and you're one of those guys people that are lucky enough to do both of the things that you love to do.
Yeah, I never put it together. Everyone in my family has like a trade, like a doctor, lawyer, or something like that. So there's really nobody that was in journalism, writing, any kind of creative field I'm an only child, so it's my parents, but even like the sort of next tier of family, everyone was like that. So nobody really knew another way to go, really. So I always was like, well, I'll be a professor. I've been a music fanatic since I was like a kid. I have like the first record I bought with like birthday money. It was like Billy Joel Glass Houses on vinyl. I still have it. I have the Pat Benatar record, like the one with "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" on it. And I was taking it out to play it, and out fell these like notepads with my like little kid writing of me transcribing the words to that song. And like, I must have been in like third grade. So I was reading liner notes. I didn't even know what this stuff meant. I was just like, whoa, where's the studio with CBS Records? I don't know. So that's always been there. My father always liked music. He was in like a doo-wop group in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
He sang like the high parts. He has like they cut a couple 45s. So I guess that was there. But yeah, that's always been there. I just didn't realize that I could just do things together. You know? And that happenstance, that I got that internship. And I was like, whoa, it's all right here.
It's interesting how that works out. I wanted to be an audio engineer. I specifically wanted to be the producer of Van Halen albums in 5150. And I started doing the math in the mid 80s when I was like 10 years old, going, wait a minute, there's like, at that time, like 5 really good guys that did that stuff.
Right.
It probably wasn't going to be me. So what else could I do? And that's when I made the switch to TV, because I thought, well, I can do the visual stuff, which I like, but then the music is incorporated. I mean, every broadcast or project has music associated with it. So that was my happy little medium. But, you know, I think for both of us, it's got us to a place where we could work with really cool people, and oftentimes like people that you looked up to or listened to, you know, even.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's strange. It's great.
Yeah. So when you know, were leaning towards like interviewing people or investigating people, is that really the first foray into that, the Eminem article in Rolling Stone?
Well, I mean, by then I believe I was already writing random notes.
Okay.
I did that column for 2 years. I did a bunch of other columns. I sort of, once I got over to the music department, like I was a researcher in the library after my internship. I interned for the books division and for the production division. So I saw, you know, they had a camera room back then. It was like a giant camera that took 4-color printings of each page and then sent it off to the printer. So it was cool. Like that, it wasn't just all digital yet. So I got to kind of see that process. Worked for a guy named RaeKwon, who was absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. I dedicated my first book for Rolling Stone called it was a summary of the raves column, which was people's favorite things. That was like his idea when I started doing that column. He was like, I've always wanted to compile this into something. So, and he had got brain cancer, honestly, and died far too soon. But so I did that, and just kind of, I was researching so much that the librarian got me a job as her assistant, and I just saw how everything sort of worked from like the back end. So anyway, when I got an opportunity to get into the music department as assisting music editor, and then just basically took any single assignment that nobody wanted and made it clear that I wanted to write, and I would write anything. And then so I'd done a bunch of things and some little interviews here and there, and then eventually got random notes, and then the Eminem thing happened. So I was just really into him. I was into a lot of like, you know, backpacker, mid-90s hip-hop, raucous records and all that kind of stuff. And he was doing, you know, just features on people's albums and like, you know, like 96, 97. And I was just like, who the hell is this guy? And sort of followed him and told my editor, you know, like a very green, enthusiastic assistant would, like, he's going to be famous. Let me write about him. And, you know, my editor was like, well, this is Rolling Stone. We barely write about hip hop, and we don't write about unsigned rappers. And I was like, but this one's different. So, you know, 2 years later when he got signed, my editor said, listen, here's your, you know, you can write like a 300-word article about him, about the My Name Is video, which back when you had to sell physical CDs and MTV was actually a marketing tool still, you'd put out a single about a month before the record, get rotations for it, so then it would boost the sales of the record. That was going crazy with My Name Is. And so he said, you know, write about this kooky video. And by the time we sort of got it together, the Interscope had the numbers for the orders for what was going to be, you know, the release of the record. So it was a much bigger thing, and he basically was like, all right, here's your chance. Don't mess it up. You're going to Detroit, write a cover story. And that's kind of what happened. And in that same issue, I actually covered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction for the first time. I wrote like 80% of one issue. I like stayed at home for 3 days. I'd never done that much, and banged it out, but it was like the greatest week of my life.
So you went to Detroit and interviewed him. Was that very similar to the process of, you know, writing these books that you're doing now?
No. No, not at all. That was a long time ago. He's very different now. And, you know, this was a guy who didn't even realize what was happening. Neither did his team. They really didn't have it together. Like, the guy who was the security guard at that point ended up writing a tell-all, so he wasn't really protected on his rep. It was really the seat of their pants. And it's all in the cover story. I just put every single thing that happened in there because that's what seems like you should do. You know, I mean, anything interesting. So, you know, he was like taking ecstasy and throwing up and like just didn't talk to me for the first 24 hours. It was like, and just stared at me, and I was like, what the hell I'm gonna fail. Like, this guy's not even talking to me.
How do you navigate a situation like that when your job is to get something from him, i.e. from dialogue, but he won't look at you? Like, how do you navigate that and get him?
He looked at me. He was like just kind of glaring at me from like across the room. I mean, I followed him to do 3 little club gigs where he did like 3 songs of each, one of which was a Sweet 16 in Staten Island for some total mobster's daughter. That was amazing. So, you know, I didn't know. I was like, holy shit, like, what am I going to do? Like, the dude's not talking to me. I mean, I knew I had a bunch more days, and we had a plane trip, and we were going to Detroit, and maybe this is just, you know, he had done the David LaChapelle photo shoot that day, which David LaChapelle is a very colorful character. There's tons of like trannies. He'd never been around like, you know, gay bisexual culture like that. So he'd gotten completely drunk because he was nervous, and you know, he was supposed to be on the cover naked, holding like a giant stick of dynamite over his crotch. We had some very conservative advertisers who objected, and they had to move that to the inside page. But that's how he had spent his day.
Yeah.
And, you know, he drank like a 5th of Bacardi because he was so nervous and didn't eat. And when I got to the office, I walked into the bathroom, he was puking. Like, when I went to say hello, I was like, So the day went from there. And then he did a bunch of ecstasy and did his club gigs and never messed up. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. But he was just in a zone, and part of that zone was just like sizing me up, because the next morning when we were like in the airport, then he was cool. We kind of bonded on this plane ride. He actually made his manager move. He's like, I want to sit next to him. So we sat together in Coach. If anyone can believe Eminem was Coach back then. And we sat together and just talked about life and stuff. And somewhere in there, he leaned over to his manager. He's like, he's going to be the one who interviews my mom. That's the only one. And I was the only person that got permission to do that. I mean, other, you know, like tabloids have interviewed her, but yeah, his permission. So something happens, and then it became, you know, then he was like pretty open, and it was awesome. But that first night I was like, oh, and here's where the writing career ends, you know? So
that's hysterical. So did that relationship that you built, quite honestly, right there in the airplane, did that lend itself to doing the book later about him?
Well, what happened was I got to a place, I mean, a couple of things happened. You know, 8 Mile was coming out. He became, after that, you know, I did another cover story on him. I became like his guy at Rolling Stone. There was a point where the music editor actually assigned a different writer to talk to him. And when a writer with the same name, who's named Anthony, he's one of my mentors, Anthony DeCurtis, a wonderful guy. But they assigned Anthony DeCurtis to do an interview with him. And when Marshall realized it wasn't me, he hung up and was like, I'm only talking to that guy, which is wonderful. He's a loyal dude. So when it came to, you know, around 2003, I wanted to kind of make a change, like rolling the editors. There was just like a strange time, you know, in magazines. And I had done my thing. And you get to a point when back when there were these things called magazines, kids, you get to a point. The way Rolling Stone is, you become like a senior writer, and you're just either you do that, or if you want to move up anymore, you become an editor. And that is, then you lose the writing. You spend more time dressing in a suit and going to meetings with advertisers and you know, putting issues together, and you sign stuff, but you don't get to write. So I kind of had a choice to make. They were changing the structure, and like sort of, they needed. And I basically didn't want to be an editor, so I took a contract and became like a writer at large. And 8 Mile was coming out, and I just like wanted to write a book about his cultural significance, kind of like the senior thesis I would have done in college if I was in college at that point. Just like what his popularity says about American culture and race and all that stuff, because that was, you know, especially with music, and like the younger generation doesn't seem to think race matters with music and whatever. I don't technically agree with that at all, but back then it really did. And, you know, the fact that he was white doing hip hop, he never would have really been accepted if he wasn't like sort of sanctioned by Dr. Dre. It's just the way it is.
He also wasn't looked at as a clown, was he? Like a la Vanilla Ice.
Right. The history of white rap up until Eminem was except for like Third Base and the Beastie Boys, was pretty bad. Let's just face it. Yeah. So, you know, it was like appropriation and just like a joke show. Like, you know, you guys are clowns. So anyway, I wanted to do that book, and I saw the opportunity and had a literary agent and did it. I went to them first, obviously, you know, Paul Rosenberg and Marshall. And they basically said, listen, there's enough sort of autobiographical stuff coming out from us, so we don't think it's the right time to do any sort of official book. But if anyone's going to do it, we trust you. So go ahead and do it. You know, Marshall's not going to give new interviews, but I didn't really need him to because I had so much stuff.
Sure.
Two big cover stories, and that first one I spent so much time on. So they were like, you know, you have our permission to talk to whoever you want in the camp, run it through us, just, you know, and that was it. So it was super cool. And this last book was a similar kind of thing. I've been wanting to talk about his dark times and just how much he changed. He really has changed dramatically, and he's a very different person. So this is a very different process because he sort of decided in 2017 he stopped doing all interviews. So, you know, they gave me stuff, but it wasn't like before. You know, he's also become very guarded in every way. I mean, when people get sober, their whole life changes, and you know, he rightfully guards his privacy, and he also knows how to do interviews and not say anything major if he doesn't want to. So I had, you know, they helped me and let me talk to. They gave me stuff, but put it this way. He's so media savvy and so guarded, even with somebody that he's trusted since 1999, that I found it more interesting to talk to the people close to him, like Denon Porter and Royce the 5'9", about Marshall's dark period, because he is so schooled in what he says that it's like he's not giving you anything. He's like, here's the tidbit. You try to ask from another angle, he kind of answers it the same way from another angle. He's super schooled. So I just thought it was more interesting to get what those people went through, watching him suffer, because that's a really big thing. I mean, I have friends who suffered from addiction and gotten sober. I've certainly worked with my share of addicts and former addicts in my book career, and the effect that it has on family members and people close to them isn't always looked at. It's not always discussed because it's not, you know, people don't think of that, but it's like, it's tremendously huge burden, and it affects them for the rest of their lives. So I kind of wanted to investigate that side of it in a way that would, you know, honor Marshall's privacy and also give those people, you know, a platform to speak on it. So that's kind of the way we went in this book.
Well, I'll jump around a little bit, but in terms of the drug use and stuff, is the family aspect overlooked because it's everything else is glorified? It's that rock and roll or, you know, lifestyle, and it pays the bills, that oftentimes the repercussions of that get swept under the rug?
I mean, I don't know. I think I don't know. I mean, I really think that it's, when people talk about their struggles, they talk more about their perspective. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, in his case, you know, Marshall's circle is so tight that the people that are closest to him are also, like, Denon is his producer for a lot of stuff, and now he's his type man on stage. He was like the perfect person to talk to. And same with Royce, has known him since '95, and Royce got sober. Eminem helped him get sober too. So
okay. So by that time, you had a literary agent. Was your pathway to get published and to have a publisher, was that kind of taken care of already? Was that an easy path to get a published
first book? What do you mean?
Well, the Eminem is your first published book, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I worked on this Rolling Stone compilation book, but
yeah, sure.
First one as me. Yes.
Yeah, your own book. Was that difficult to get published?
No, not at all. I mean, this is not the way it usually works. This is how much of a hot topic he was, and also publishing has changed. Don't get me started on the state of the publishing industry and how they learned nothing from the music industry and Napster and all that stuff that they haven't. They're very archaic in the way they do business. But back then, they, I guess, I don't know if people were buying more books, probably. Back then, just to give you an idea of how much he was the biggest star in the world at the time, like on everyone's tongue right after 8 Mile. I had an agent and was working on some projects and just some ideas, and I wrote him an email about wanting to write this Eminem thing and just brainstorming the cultural significance and why it's important and all the kind of like intellectual elements of it. And he turned around and took that email and sent it to 5 publishers and started a bidding war. Right, 8 Mile came out on a Friday. I think he sent it out Monday, and Wednesday I was talking to 4 different editors and had a book deal by Thursday.
Oh, great.
That's not normal.
Yeah.
But that worked for that. I was like, really? I was like, I would have written it better. He's like, nope, you nailed the essence of this story, the essence of the book. So that's what happened. Yeah. Lo and behold, that's not, sometimes it can be that easy. I mean, I've done celebrity stuff where we just have called and gone in a couple of meetings and that's it. But, I've also had to write book proposals. Most people have to write like 60-page book proposals or more, Do
you still have to do that?
It depends. Like I'll write a sample chapter with somebody if I'm working with someone. And if that could be as long as, that could be 15 to 40 pages depending on what I choose to do. Or what chunk of the story I want to do in that. It really depends. If I'm working with famous people, usually to some degree that that speaks for themselves. You always have to, publishers want to see marketing stuff and all that, but the agent puts that together. So.
Well, you mentioned that the publishing industry is archaic. You and I originally met because I reached out because I saw an opportunity way back then. This is 10 years ago or so.
At least.
That you could take books, and with the emergence of tablets, that these ebooks, which are at the time they were called ebooks, now ebooks are something else, but right. To incorporate media in these books, and we met in New York and talked about it, and all these years later, they haven't really done anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's wild.
Absolutely nothing. It's so frustrating. I just can't with. I mean. Listen, I make most of my money publishing books, but I just can't get over how much they're just like old fuddy-duddies on a sinking ship. There's so much opportunity to make digital books come alive. I met some service that was doing some really cool stuff, and I could never get a publisher to pay for it, and I wasn't going to pay like $30,000 to $50,000 to make my own book, and then if they don't even have the means to distribute it,
right.
It doesn't format in with the way they sell things to Amazon. It was just talks like that. I'm like, well, who are the executives? Hey, what are you guys doing besides I don't know, going out to lunch? And what are you doing then?
And that's
especially with what I do. There's so much opportunity to just have hot links. If I'm talking about a certain concert, link to the footage that's on YouTube or something like that. To show a piece of the concert or what I'm talking about, or even, in purchases, it's so right there, and they're not doing it.
It would be really cool, and we talked about this, of showing some of those behind the scenes of the interviews that you do that enable you to write these books. I mean, that's some really rich content that would go over extremely well. And the technology has been there from the beginning. It's just no one's using it forever.
No one's doing it. They're just all they did was tack on audiobook and ebook, which is just the book in a PDF essentially.
Right. That's all it is. Yeah.
And they've been doing that for 10 years and with like no advancement.
Yeah.
And there's so many developers who would happily partner with like one publishing house and knock their socks off. It's just, it's ridiculous. And there's too many, you know, maybe the pandemic will change things a little bit. I know that a lot of people have been furloughed or just, you know, put out to pasture in that industry. But I think it's just one of those things which has hurt the music industry at the beginning, which is a lot of old school executives who are used to getting their salary, having their expense account, living the life they want, and making deals the way they do deals and not evolving. And publishing most certainly did that. I mean, even with piracy, you know, I've like given up on how many times I see my books. Somebody literally takes the time to scan 480 pages of Slash's book and put it up for free for piracy. I mean, that only hurts me, frankly. You know, Slash is doing just fine. But you know, every time I would see that, I'd like send it to the legal department, and eventually they'll send a cease and desist. You know, there's really nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
So,
well, let's move on. Why does Acdc matter?
Oh boy. Because I said so, dude. I mean, one of the great rock bands. What else do I have to say? You know why they matter.
I know. I wanted to hear from you, though. You know,
Well, because they're true rock and roll. I mean, they're like, you know, Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
Chuck Berry style, just rock and roll, you know, just amplified and modernized. And that's a direct line. That's what I say in the book, like over and over again. It's a direct line from like Chuck Berry on through. And that's why I think they matter. They're not, I just remember growing up and it was like everyone called them like a metal band, and they're just not. They swing too much for metal. They're just like, they're a rock and roll, like Bo Diddley kind of amazing roots band like that. That's how I see it.
It's interesting that you said a direct line, because as a musician, the one thing I love about Acdc is that there's no boxes, you know, in front of them, the foot pedals and all that. It's literally a direct line from their guitar to their amp.
True.
There's like in a concert, there's no set. There's not their roadie's not in the back flipping switches. It's one setting. They go out and play in that one setting, and that's it. And it's still pure and it's great. So in right after high school, a really good friend of mine, his father was a manager, or his father's friend was a manager of the CSC, which were those like yellow coat event staff people that work at concerts.
Yeah.
So he got us a gig there, and because we knew certain people, you know, the hierarchy there of gigs at a job, you know, because we knew the boss, we would get like backstage assignments and stuff like that. And I remember when my first gig was Acdc, and I want to say it was the Thunderstruck tour. And they opened up the show, everything went dark, and people were screaming, and then this giant bell drops down, and you hear that boing, and I was just kind of taken aback. It was like an experience like I've never seen at a concert before.
Nice.
But that's what they provide, you know. And they're also a band that I can name maybe 3 bands that switch singers for whatever reason. In this case, it was death, but they became more successful with the second singer, and that says a lot about the band.
Yep.
What are they? Do you have any idea what they're doing right now? Are they getting back together?
No clue. I mean, they're pretty. Nothing can stop those guys, I guess. I don't know. You know.
I've seen they've been recording in Vancouver, and with COVID, I think it screwed up any type of touring plans. But I would love to see them back together with Brian.
That would be cool. I did see Axl Rose fronting them in New York, and it was absolutely incredible.
You liked it then?
Oh my God, did I like it? Well, because also Axl pulled out all the like old Bon Scott stuff that like Brian wasn't doing.
Yeah.
So I'm a Bon Scott guy. I mean, I love Brian too, but Bon was my dude. So, and Axl was just having an absolute blast. I mean, I saw a lot of the Guns N' Roses stuff because I did Slash's book.
Okay.
I had a lot of Axl that year. He was just having a blast. Like he was, you know, he would do his parts and literally just be sitting on the side, like watching Angus and just dancing and just like loving it. Like it was really cool.
I would love to read your Axl Rose book if that ever happened. That would be an amazing story.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it'll happen now. I sort of, I mean, those guys they totally get along now, but
Yeah.
um,
No, but just his
I did Slash. He's not Axl. Just guys in bands are. They're not, he's not going to pick Slash's guy. He's going to.
I know. I would love to hear that story though, because he seems like he's changed a lot. From a guy that refused to go on stage and would make the crowd wait for hours and hours to now he seems like he's on top of things. So.
Absolutely. I would love to hear. I know that somebody wrote the book that I never read. It's tough because when I spend my career is writing these kind of books, and people are always like, "Well, did you read this one? Did you read that one?" I'm like, I read fiction when I'm not doing that because it's just strange. I mean, if it's a really good one or someone I really love, I'll read it. But there's a lot of them. It became an industry. So. I remember, I think it was Stephen Davis who did Hammer of the Gods, or did he do No One Here Gets Out Alive? One of those. Maybe it's Hammer of the Gods. I think it's Hammer of the Gods. I think he did one called War, W-X-L-R-O-S, W-A-R. I remember that coming out and being excited about it and literally heard nothing. But maybe I heard I think that he sort of peaked. I mean, I hate to say this, but his earlier... Right, Hammer of the Gods was probably the best. But did you read that? Because it was a biography. It was a biography. So, and I know Axl is incredibly private, so it probably wasn't that insightful.
I'm going to say this, and I'm not stroking you by any means, but I told a friend, Laura Morton, who does a lot of these co-writing things. She's doing more of the Al Roker kind of books and less of the Tommy Lee kind of books.
Gotcha.
When it comes to rock, and I am a rocker fan, like when we talked about those original Stones and Beatles, I'm a Stones guy and I love the Beatles, but the Stones just have that rock.
Oh yeah, they're dangerous. I like both. It's very hard for me to ever choose. But the reason why I chose Beatles is because just the amount of things they did that record, that's nobody can really.
Yeah. But we're going to get into your co-writing career, and I want to lead into that with, I don't think anyone tells the story or certainly captures the artist's story better than you, because you feel like you're in that room. You feel like you're experiencing it for the first time. If I could change anything, I would. If I had a time capsule, I would want to be on the LA Strip, 1985, and just kind of be a fly on the wall during that period. And you kind of capture those things, So I don't need that time capsule anymore. But that being said, you got into the co-writing gig, the space with Tommy Lee.
Yes.
How did the co-writing process compare with writing nonfiction, where you're embedded with the talent in these cases?
It's completely different. It's totally different. Tommy was my first. Oh God, wonder how many people can say that on the Sunset Strip. Probably a lot. That was a whole big other thing because I got the Eminem book deal. I worked really hard because part of the deal was that it had to be out. They wanted it out that year as soon as possible. So I really killed myself. I'd never written anything that long. And in there, I found, a bunch of stuff happened. I got approached by another agent to do the Tommy Lee thing. And so, before I knew it, I'd written this book, really knocked it out, and then was like on a plane to LA, and I didn't really know what to expect because I'd never really done a co-write. I was just like, oh, okay, I'm writing in someone's voice. This will be fun. And Tommy, I've never had an experience like that again because he had me end up moving in with him once we became friends. And he was like, didn't want to, I had a little apartment that was part of my contract. But I was hardly ever sober enough to drive there by the end of the day because Tommy's thing was he was just kind of hazing me. He was like, you got to live like me if you're going to write like me, dude. We're really good friends to this day. I talk to him a couple times a week usually. So,
well, living like him is coming from Tommy Lee of Motley Crue, who rewrote the books of How to Live That Way. So that's a scary proposition.
It was a lot. It was quite a bit. Yeah. I had to sort of, I mean, that I just figured it out, you know. I just recorded him. I was around him. The difference is you have to forget yourself somehow when it comes to writing it, and you have to just sort of like absorb, because you know, you have to absorb their nuances, the way they tell a story, words they use, words they don't use. Find a way to bring just elements of what it's like to be around that person into the way you tell the story, whether that's like chaotic. I mean, you don't want to overdo it because then it'll just seem like a mess and seem like you don't know what you're doing. But, you know, I've had journalist friends who wanted to get into co-writing just say like, okay, so, you know, you record the transcripts, get your transcripts and just clean it up and cut it. And I was like, you keep thinking that, go for it. Give it a shot. And inevitably those same people are like, they either don't get their book sold or like, you know, it's too hard, because there's a weird other psychological element. It's like you have to kind of do therapy with the person as well and sort of figure out, you have to figure out to some degree how they see themselves and also how they want themselves to be seen, and make those things come together in the voice that you choose. Like the hardest part of the process is getting the voice right. And I'm very meticulous about that. Like, I'll work on one chapter and, you know, something to show them for, I mean, it's definitely 30% longer than probably the rest of the book. Like, once I get that, it's like we're off to the races. And I sort of have that voice in my head. I mean, it's like an actor getting an accent for a character.
Well, in situations where, like, if I remember correctly, you were writing Artie Lange's book the same time you were writing Courtney Love's book. Is that
writing? There was a time there, it's great to be popular, but there was a time, well, because Artie, we got a book deal immediately for book 2 because Too Fat to Fish was a #1 New York Times bestseller and sold a lot of copies. We got a second book deal immediately, but then Artie completely crashed and burned, pun intended, and just fell off the wagon and was in a deep depression for 2 years. So when he sort of reemerged and, you know, got sober briefly, I was already working with Courtney, who I legally can't talk about very much, although I would love to. I was working on that, and I was working with Mick Fleetwood on his book. So when Artie resurfaced, the publisher, you know, who'd already spent quite a deal of money on the advance, were really eager to, you know, start recouping on their investment, and pretty much demanded that it happen right away. So that year I was writing 3 books at the same time. One of which was Artie Lange's like super depression, drug addiction story, and Courtney Love, both of which were like a lot. And Mick Fleetwood was just like this breath of fresh air because he's such a wonderful human being.
But is there a mental switch inside of you in order to, you know, write an Artie's voice versus Mick's voice all at the same time? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had 3 switches. I just sort of, you know, I looked at when things were due and when I got time with people. Okay. Like I said, Mick, consistent. The other 2, not known for consistency. So it was just kind of, I just had to do it. You know, I just had to be like, this is Artie Land for these couple days. Yeah. For me, also, I usually look at it like I get my interviews and I'm just really involved in that process. And I like that process to happen at once because you get into a rhythm of talking about things and moving through different periods of people's lives. And then I kind of disappear and go do my writing thing, which is like best in isolation. That year was tough because there was always like I'd be writing one and interviewing another. So I tried to keep from like, you know, it wasn't like I would write Artie from 10 to 12 and then switch to the other. I was mostly like deep in writing one of them and then interviewing the other one at the same time, like on 2 days a week or 3 days a week or something like that. It wasn't something I suggest.
What's the length of time that you're usually embedded with them, hanging out with them in order to get what you need to write the book?
It's, you know, that's like, it really, like how much time do I need usually?
Yeah. Like you were with Tommy for what, a couple months?
I lived with Tommy for 8 months.
Okay.
or 9 months. We had a baby together. And then I sort of came home and then went back out and we did edits on it because he was so involved. It was wonderful. We did edits for like another month maybe.
Okay.
And then I just didn't want to leave because living with Tommy, and he lived in the house that was on cribs that he used to share with Pam. So it was just playland. It was amazing. And then I was like, I really need to pull myself out. This is not reality. I'm like, what am I doing here? I have a life somewhere, or I used to. So I don't know. It really depends on how forthcoming the person is, how good of a storyteller. But I would say that usually I need like between 17 and 20 usable hours to tell someone's story.
Okay. How would you compare time with Tommy with time with, let's say, Slash?
Well, Slash was sober. He was freshly out of rehab. And so it was very different setup. Like Tommy and I was living with Tommy. He wasn't in Motley Crue. He didn't have anything else going on. But as he always says in interviews, Bozza and I went on tour. We just never left the house. So it was like, he used to have a dirt bike track and like all these like motocross dudes would show up. It was just a party all the time or somewhere to go. It was crazy and really fun. But with Slash, Slash was more like, I would show up. He used to, when he was still doing drugs, which is literally just before that, he would sort of put his kids to bed, say goodnight to his wife, and then like sit in his studio downstairs, which is like just kind of a little sunroom with like a little mini digi recorder, and do some drugs and like smoke and play guitar to like from like midnight to 4. And so that's the time that he filled with me. So I was showing up at his house at like midnight to interview till like 4 in the morning, anywhere between 2 to 3 days a week for about 2 months, until we got it all done. So that was a very different thing. And it was just like, he was, once he sort of locked into the process and he got into it, it was like, he was really into it. But at first it was like, he's pretty private. He was never the guy doing the interviews. He didn't like to. He let Axl do all that stuff and Duff. He didn't like it, but he wanted to tell a story finally, and he gave it. So it couldn't be more different, frankly.
That was a great book.
Thank you.
Working in that space when you're working around the drugs and the environment, were you similar to like a news cameraman or a reality show cameraman that you're not stopping record, but you might want to like intervene on some level at some point? Did you ever feel like you wanted to intervene in any way if things got really super dangerous with?
Nothing's ever gotten like that. Artie Lange was doing drugs, but he wasn't. He was lying about it. So yeah. I knew he was on drugs, but he wasn't admitting it to me or anybody else. So didn't really know what to do. There's definitely, one time I was driving with him and was like, can I just drive the car, please? But made it home. Artie's, he's a train wreck. So I don't know. But not really with anybody else. Nothing was ever like, I don't know even know if I can answer your question appropriately.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get it.
Nothing was ever, Tommy was just, Tommy knows, Tommy's sober now, but, he's a professional. He knew what he was doing, so.
I hear you. I didn't know if there were any, like, scary moments, throughout the fun that, you had to reel back or something.
Really? No.
All right, so let's go on to Tracy Morgan real quick. I remember some past conversations. Was it a fun book to write?
No, not really. Tracy, God bless him. He had a really rough life, and I was actually really proud of him that he was not trying to be the funny man in the book, and he was going to be really serious about it. So I was really proud to help get that story out there. That's the real story. Yeah. The thing about Tracy is that he is telling you like heartbreaking facts about his life. They're delivered in the same way that he delivers like anything. So, he's like, I miss my dad. It's like, I would try not to laugh just because the guys, as he said to me himself, he's like, I'm a funny looking dude. And that's half of what it is being funny, And you just stare at you and I'm like, can't with this guy. So my biggest challenge was like trying to be sensitive without laughing. So, but it wasn't very easy because Tracy, like, you know, the only reason that book got completed on time is because he had to have pretty severe eye surgery. He's a very bad diabetic and is like had to have all this eye surgery, and he couldn't really leave his bed for about 2 weeks. And that's I had him trapped. That's the only way we got this book done on time, because Tracy would like always have somebody who'd be like, "Come on," he's like, we'd be interviewing, he'd be like, "Go, we're going for a quick ride. We'll be back in a couple minutes." And we ended up driving to Yankee Stadium and sitting in Lorne Michaels seats and watching a ball game. I mean, these are all fun things, but when you have like an editor who's like, you know, the head of she was just like, she's a cranky woman anyway, but which, you know, it's hard to get things on time when you're dealing with the character from 30 Rock is who he is. So that was always a bit of a problem. Super entertaining though. You know, you'd be driving around and you'd be like, "Yo, baby, this is my writer. Give him your phone number." Like just stuff like that was hilarious. Tracy, oops, sorry. Call you back. Tracy didn't really understand that writing a book was not the same as doing a magazine article. So for the first 3 interviews, he gave me the same exact material. Oh my God. I was like, "Tracy, we talked about this last time. I get it." And he was like, he was talking about his life the way he would do for like a feature in, you know, Vanity Fair or something. I was like, "You know that I'm the same guy that was here last week." You know?
I don't want to say ADD, but he was like all over the place, right? Was it hard to keep up with where?
And like diabetes, and like he was like, then I think he's treating himself better now, but then he was like eating sugar. I'm like, just dude, come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that.
Well, what was the moment that you realized you made it? Like you felt like you made it?
I mean, getting a #1 New York Times bestseller, that'll do it.
Yeah.
To ask any writer, you know. I mean, listen, a lot of things hit #1 that don't even sell a lot. They just happen to make it. But I mean, in the case of Too Fat to Fish, it was both. We sold a ton of copies, still do, and you know, hit #1. So that's. I mean, I've hit the bestseller list 8 times, so I feel great about that. But #1 is #1, and I'm not gonna lie, that was like amazing.
Will you be writing your memoir about writing these books?
I might at some point, but I should retire first. There's my manager has a concept for me to do it. I always thought that if I did that, I'd have to stop writing books like this, because, you know, some people might look at that and be like, "Oh, anything that happens, this guy's going to write about." But, you know, like, it wouldn't even, I think there's a way to possibly do it that's not, you know, too salacious or anything like that. I'm not sure yet. I've got other projects first, but maybe someday.
Do you have a dream book that you want to write with an artist?
I wanted to work with Prince, and I almost did on something. I would have loved to work with David Bowie. The Prince thing would have been interesting. That didn't come to be. Who else is out there, you mean? Like, yeah. I mean, I really want to write a book with Jimmy Page. We try that all the time.
If that happens, I just need some answer. The Led Zeppelin drives me absolutely crazy because they're all alive. I mean, the 3 of them, and Plant and John Paul Jones wants to do it, from what it appears to me, but Plant doesn't. But then Plant goes off and does all the Zeppelin songs with other people, and it drives me nuts.
It's annoying. I'm with you too. I mean, I want to do anything with Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Also, Roger Waters or David Gilmour. Anything, either of them. I would probably only be able to pick one. They would be cool. I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, when asking that question, I always like to think of the people who will be leaving us soonest. Let's start there and then go down.
Yeah.
I think those would be at the top of my list.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump back really quick before we start to wrap up. Rolling Stone, do you think they get it right with any of their lists? And like that guitar player list comes out, I just cringe because I would never imagine that list the way they.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, that's why I did why ACDC Matters, because when I was there, first of all, those lists are designed to inspire discussion and argument and just getting people fired up about, their exchanging opinions and stuff. And they always sell well because people get annoyed and they buy it and they're like, oh, grumble, grumble, grumble. So they're designed to do that to you.
All right.
But, why ACDC Matters, I wrote because, I had a publisher they were starting that. It was going to be basically, I was sick of going to meetings, compiling these things, and being like, ACDC, Angus and Malcolm Young, and have them be like, oh, sit down, stoner. And I'd be like, God, I hate you. You're all wrong. And so that's why I got to write. And I got to write a book about it. I did, and I got to rant about it. But thank you to my publisher. Actually, the publisher who bought it is now my book agent.
Oh, nice.
She's the coolest.
Will you get any feedback from those guys when you write a book like that without their help? Like, do you ever hear from those guys?
The management let me use the logo on the cover without paying for it. So that to me, management read it and was like, sure, you can have it. And those guys don't do that.
Yeah.
They do not. They are mercurial. They don't care how much money they have. You are paying. Very old school that way. So to me, that's the biggest thumbs up, I could get from them. Yeah. So those lists are designed to do that. I don't think they ever get it right, but again, they're like,
that's what they're for.
Part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just remember them like really not respecting ACDC and me getting annoyed. Like, forget that.
I get that. I mean, some of my favorite bands, they always, had to put their thumb up or their nose up to, and it would drive.
The same with like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What's that?
Oh my God! Well, it's like the music. I mean, this is also the magazine that loves Yoko Ono and thinks she's an amazing artist, and I just don't get it.
Simply because Jan Wenner is very good friends with her.
Yeah.
And when he's friends with someone, he makes the editors. Everyone's got to act like they like it.
With the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing either, because it just doesn't make any sense. Not even just the who's inducted, but just, I mean, you can't invite friends, or there's a lot. But the whole thing just, I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. But yeah, Rolling Stone is, it's always Jan Wenner's like playground to some degree.
Yeah.
So that's why, like Mark Knopfler's like solo records and no one cares about get like 5 stars, and Nevermind didn't. Things like that. You're like, come on.
You just explain Rolling Stone to the T.
Yeah.
All right, so
say, okay, boomer. See, it's like the biggest okay boomer ever.
What has been your favorite failure that led to like a breakthrough? Do you have
I don't know. Like something that didn't sell, or you mean
something that didn't pan out, or you maybe wrote something that you maybe wish you didn't, or
I don't know really.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, maybe might be I don't know, maybe the Courtney Love thing, but I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Had to sign a bunch of legal documents.
That sounds fun.
Yo, that was a great time. Really good.
How do you use media, like social media, to get the news out there, to push the books that you're writing or the projects that you're involved in?
I am terrible because I don't do social media enough. I've sort of, especially with the pandemic and stuff, I've just been like, I just can't really. I have Instagram and Facebook, and I have a lot more people on Facebook because the people who read books are generally a little older. And a lot of the subjects I write about, just understandably, like I don't always think like a 25-year-old should be doing an autobiography. Just with people that are like 50, 60, and their fans are often the same age. So, my Instagram is mostly based on my career stuff, and that's just how I kind of push it. I'm really good about getting back to fans if they get in touch with me. I have my podcast that I started that has an Instagram too, but it's a podcast, so I don't think people
about that. What got you? What is the podcast about?
I guess to answer you, I use social media to just promote what I'm doing. I need to, like, my manager's yelling at me that I don't do it enough. So mostly for me, it's like I'm a writer, so I like spend more time writing the caption than I really should, than is the nature of the beast. So I'm just trying to like do it quickly, but I'm a stickler. I'm like a grammar person, you know, I want it to like read well. And then it's like, what am I doing this for? I got other shit to do. So that's kind of what ends up happening.
And that would take a ton of pressure when you and I would write each other, that I would have to reread my stuff to make sure it was up.
Oh, don't worry about it. I do actually. I got, I was in touch with a lot of Eminem fans all over the world for the last Eminem book, which was really cool because that wasn't around when the first one came out. I like social media when people can get in touch with me, because like writing is a thing, and it's nice to know that something you've done and written, pretty much in your house or wherever you write, gets out there and really moves somebody. So I've gotten some really heartfelt notes, especially with the Eminem stuff, which has been amazing this last go round. Because that was, it's different when I'm co-writing with somebody, the story is there. So people don't always if they understand the process, they might get in touch with me and say it was a great book. But the Eminem book is entirely me doing it, and it's been really cool to be in touch with people about that. Yeah. My podcast is something totally different. It's called Winyl, and it is wine and vinyl. So it's really fun. I'm actually putting the finishing touches on season 2, and we're going to get that up in the next couple of months, because we were kind of waiting to see what, there's no way I can do in-person interviews. I don't think it's safe for anybody yet. And I don't really want to be wine tasting with a mask on and somebody sitting here with me, and it's just be weird. It's not the nature of wine tasting. So the whole podcast is my guest chooses their favorite album or an album that changed their life, something that really means a lot to them. And I work with these incredible wine buyers in California who are not, they're buyers, so they get from all over the world. And they're music nerds, and we pick a perfect bottle to embody that record.
It's like wine and music pairing. I love it.
Yeah, so we pair wine to the record or the artist, and I sit and talk about it with the person and why it changed their life and what they like about it. We learn a little about the wine. Then I'd have an interview with my wine expert where he brings all the nerdy wine knowledge. So you get everything. You get an interview, you get pop culture stuff, and you get a wine expert telling you why this is a special thing. So it's pretty fun. And we do, it's season 1 was really cool. I did one with Tommy where he talked about physical graffiti. It was really cool. I've had some people, most of the people I've written with, the ones who were drinking, can't get Slash on that one. That's what we do. And it's really fun. And season 2, I had like I said, it's just going to be a short season. The plan is to always do 10 or so episodes, and this is probably going to be 6 just because I don't want to sit on these anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm putting the finishing touches on it, and it's going to be really cool. There was this festival, remember music festivals? Well, there was a music festival called Music Tastes Good in Long Beach, and those guys let me actually do a Winyl bar in the VIP section, which is awesome. I got to write descriptions. I picked 18 artists out of it. It was a 3-day festival, and paired a wine with the artist, and wrote a description of the artist and the wine and why it went together. And it was dope. It was funny to be like people coming up and be like, "Can I get 2 Lizzos and a Janelle Monáe?" It's really funny. it was really funny. So
awesome.
That's what it is. It's like an interview show, and then we're going to do some live events if that's ever allowed again. It's a super bummer because we had a bunch of cool stuff lined up. We were going to have do it live. Oh, there's my dog. Waking from a nap. Hey, buddy. So we were going to do it live, and, price of admission, you get to, drink the wine that we're... Somebody wants to be on camera. Come here.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there she is. Hey, buddy. Anyway, so that's I'm really excited about that.
Could you turn that into a book?
What, Winyl?
Coffee table book?
Yeah, I hope so. Once we start getting more content, that's the goal. We have a bunch of other things probably going for that. And like the live events are one. There's a great wine bar in Brooklyn here that is putting in like a radio thing to do podcasts, and I'm probably going to start doing it from there because they want to partner up on it.
Oh, wow.
So we'll get a video element. I have a really good sound engineer now because I had somebody who totally flaked out on the season. Just like all the stuff that happens when you first get going happened in season 1, and now I sort of have the team kind of dialed in a little bit more. So,
well, before we leave, with COVID and being on lockdown, has that affected your business at all, or does it give you more time to write because you're at home?
Well, I haven't officially announced this yet, but I'm going to. But I did sell a book during this, which was good. And I'm going to be working with RaeKwon from Wu-Tang Clan.
Nice.
And we did all of the interviews during this time when he had nowhere to go. So something that would take me like several months, he was bored, and we got on the phone at the beginning we got like every day for 2 weeks. And stuff that would take me, like I said, months, we're done. I'm probably going to do my last interview now.
Wow.
And then I'm going to start writing. So in that way, it was fantastic for productivity for me.
Well, good. Glad to hear that. And thank you for the exclusive. I appreciate that.
Of course, man. Yeah, I haven't even put it on my Instagram because I don't do that stuff enough. We're basically, honestly, I don't like to do anything until contracts are totally complete. And even though we've done all the interviews for the book already, and I know the publisher wants it, there was a lot of back and forth. And like with everybody working from home, like the legal departments at publishers are taking forever. And, we finally are getting the annotated agreement like tomorrow or something. So I think it's fine to start saying it. But it's really funny to not even announce it, and we've finished all the interviews. Like the majority of the interviews are absolutely done. Like 35 hours with this guy.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. I'm really excited about this book. Like really.
That's amazing.
Wu-Tang is like, it's Wu-Tang Clan. And RaeKwon's story is like, the guy dealt crack from like 16 to 20 and never got arrested, never got caught, got shot. Like his stories are amazing.
Well, that's awesome. When do you? Mine's just chill.
Always does this. There's one really loud stormtrooper squeaky toy that I swear to God she knows when I'm videoing somebody, and she gets it. She did that on I was doing a live interview about Eminem with English radio, the very proper guy, and she got this squeaky toy in the other room. It was so loud, and I was just like, oh my God. I went outside on my terrace.
My dog, it's a 12-year-old lab, and when all this happened, we obviously started taking virtual meetings and phone calls, and had the AirPods in, and he did not get the connection that I wasn't talking to him, because usually I'm walking around talking to him, I'm talking to him. And anything that I was doing, I had to, like you said, walk outside or something, because he thought that I was engaging with him, and then it'd be like a ball in my lap or this or that. So funny. Well, listen, Anthony, thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy. Next time I'm in New York and we can actually get together, the drink's on me. And I'm going to hold you to your promise. You probably don't even remember this, but if you ever did Eddie Van Halen's book, I'm going to be the guy that does something for you, like hold your computer during the
No problem. He would be a great one. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see. I
don't know. He's holds everything close to the vest, I hear. But I'm pulling for a Van Hagar reunion soon.
All right.
Well, thank you, and we'll talk soon, man.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Thanks, Tom.